My name is Joe Peroni, and this is the Rise Above Project. As a licensed marriage and family therapist, one question that I seem to get all the time, people want to know who cheats more, men or women. My answer to that right off is that that's a terrible question. You're never going to get to the truth that way because you're depending on self-report, which means you have to depend on people's honesty. And in our culture, that's not going to happen. Men tend to exaggerate and women tend to minimize. Therefore, it's not a good question. So here's a better question. Who struggles more with monogamy? Or who struggles more with being faithful? Is it men or women? Now, if we use that question, we can get to the truth a little bit easier because people aren't being pushed into admitting that they may have done something wrong. What I want to do is offer about maybe 4 or 5 parts of evidence that then everybody out there can figure out what they think is the truth or not. So let's start off with some findings that were published in the Journal of Psychological Science. From that, I want to ask a very interesting question that comes from that study. What is one way that a woman can boost their self-esteem, their well-being, and their life satisfaction? Now, I know this is going to trigger a lot of men, but the answer to that is having an affair, which is really interesting as a finding. So having an affair tends to, not always, but it does build up a woman's self-esteem, well-being, life satisfaction. And it gives them something that they desire. And I know we all want to say that it's emotional, some type of emotional benefit, and that could be true, but it's also a sexual benefit, and it's also the benefit of getting more attention. That's what the study says. What does it say about a man having an affair? Well, they tend to have an increase in guilt. They tend to have an increase in their shame. Their self-esteem goes down. Their well-being goes down. And their life satisfaction also goes down. Now, we've all seen the evidence that says if a man is insecure or has low self-esteem and he's narcissistic, cheating at that point will raise his self-esteem. However, I find it really interesting that a man's self-esteem will go up if he has low self-esteem and he's narcissistic if he has an affair. However, a woman can be narcissistic or not narcissistic. Either way, her self-esteem goes up during an affair. Again, I'm not saying 100% of the time, we're just going by percentages here. So that's the first part. The second part of evidence I'd like to put in here is I want to talk about a plethysmograph, which is it measures the sexual response in a man or a woman by determining blood flow to sexual organs, meaning that you can't lie, or at least you can't verbally lie. This machine will be able to tell what your body is feeling. So let's go with the first part. What were the findings on a heterosexual man? What gave them a sexual response? And here we could see watching heterosexual sex or lesbians, 2 women. Now, you don't have to be an expert to know that, right? Like, that's obvious, we all knew that. But that's about it for men. That's about all they found to be stimulating. What offered sexual responses for a woman? Well, heterosexual sex, lesbian sex, gay sex, animals having sex, and random objects that looked like phallic symbols. So basically everything was something that could be thought of as a sexual stimulator for a woman. But what's also interesting about this study is that when they spoke to men and women before this, men told the truth. They said, yeah, I like men and women together, sure, and I like 2 girls. Women said nothing close to what was the actual truth. Therefore, self-report is actually a bad thing to do. Women did not admit that they liked every form of sexuality. And again, is it their fault? No. I'm going to say society is very oppressive to women in many areas. Sexual area is one of them. And so therefore, they're not going to tell the truth. but a plethysmograph is going to tell the truth for them. And so here we go. So now we have two pieces of evidence here. And if you're a man watching this, I know this is not going well for you, right? If you have, insecurity issues, this is going to increase them. So I just want you to know as we go on. Let's look at some more evidence. Here is the result from 6 longitudinal studies spanning the ages of 18 to 70 years old with tens of thousands of people in these studies. And this is what they found in long-term monogamous relationships, that men don't report boredom with their sexual partner until after around the 9th to the 12th year, to where they start to, you have to spice it up because they are getting a little bit bored of being with one partner. However, women tend to get bored within 1 year, up to 4 years. And part of the conclusion of these studies is that women suffer from low desire. However, it's not because they don't like sex. It's because the lack of variety. It's the lack of adventure. It's the lack of spontaneity. It's the lack of novelty and the lack of attention that they would prefer from more than one person. So think about that for a little bit. Now, if you have, let's say, according to these studies, if the average man is getting bored after about 10 years, and the average woman is getting bored, say, around after 2 years, there's an 8-year gap there. So again, if we're going to ask the actual question of who has more difficulty or who struggles most with monogamy and being faithful, we can't say for sure if it's a man or a woman. But if a woman on average is struggling for 8 years of boredom in a 10-year marriage, let's say, you would have to say that it's a pretty good possibility that she would be struggling much more with being faithful than the man would. Here's another question to add to some of our evidence today. Why are more people discussing polyamory and monogamish relationships in getting into a swinging lifestyle? Why are more people talking about that these days? And here's the answer. Because women are leading the next generation of sexual revolution. That's why. The studies that we have so far say about 2/3, or if you like numbers, about 66% of when someone is going to at least ask for or want to introduce polyamory or other partners in the relationship, it's a woman. So if we think about that, again, who's struggling with monogamy? Well, it would make sense that if 2/3 of women are the ones, now I'm not saying in all relationships, 66% are asking for open relationships, no. But of the ones who are, it's women. So that would lead someone to believe highly that it's definitely women who have more trouble with staying monogamous. Let's continue, and I want to leave you with this. Wednesday Martin, who's an author, she wrote the book called Untrue. And she said that everything that we think about women's sexuality has been wrong. And the reason for it is because we live in a sexually repressed or oppressed society. And all this new evidence that's coming out, she thinks I think she calls it the Great Correction. And so it's now time to be able to be honest and open about what's really going on about sexuality between men and women. Here are some more thoughts for some guys out there who are insecure that are worried about this, because I'm not here to make you feel better. I'm here to just throw out some truths. When we look at this, women do have more social connections in the world. And it's nobody's fault. Like, women prefer that. Men, for whatever reason, don't, or they're just not doing it. So that's just part of a lifestyle. But women do have more social connections, meaning that if they're going to cheat, they do have more alibis, right? Because they have other people that will cover for them. And they also have much more in terms of opportunity. And so that's also something. The other part of it is that people tend to cover for women a lot more in terms of not wanting to catch them. For example, if a man has a mistress, the chances of that mistress calling the wife at some point is relatively high compared to some man going out of his way to call some woman's husband that she's cheating with or on. That's rare. You don't really get men doing that, whereas women do use that as leverage. So that's a problem. Well, I mean, it depends on what side you stand if it's a problem or not. But what I'm saying is, going back to the beginning, is the better question is who struggles with monogamy, who struggles with being faithful. And it doesn't mean for sure that women have trouble more than men, but it does say that they have more opportunity and they have a society that's willing to cover for them. And by all of our studies here, they also get sexually turned on easier than men do, and they get bored faster than men do. So come up with any conclusion you want, because in the end it doesn't matter. Every individual is an individual, and they need to be seen like that. I hope today was enlightening for you. I hope I didn't trigger too many people, men. But again, I get this question a lot, so it deserves to be answered. I hope you found this important. My name is Joe Prony. This is the Rise Above Project. Please subscribe and tell a friend. Thank you.